very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams. Thank you, Minister, for joining us finally on the program.
You're a very special guest. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Now, you have several departments and institutions which fall under your purview. We won't be able to get through all of them this evening, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. Starting with the Barbados Probation Service, which also has a long list of functions, but it acts more or less as a deterrent in trying to keep persons out of the penal institutions. As the name suggests, it literally provides counseling to persons placed on probation, and that department also provides supervision to persons granted community service. Let's look at the role of the probation department.
So the probation department is actually a very, very important department. I think its importance is often understated. You said it acts as a deterrent from people getting into the system. Now, one of the major benefits of the probation department is that successful probation helps to keep people from getting a criminal record. So the court has many avenues at its disposal in terms of sentencing. Does it intend to send a message by the sentencing? Does it intend to punish the person? Does it intend to act as a deterrent to other people in doing the sentencing? Or, in some cases, is it a rehabilitative tool? Do you want to impose a sentence that can help the person get back on the right track? Put them into something, a program that they have to do. They have no choice but to do it and help them turn their life around. Or sometimes the sentencing can be a combination of all three of those. The probation department has come a long way. What is in the future for the probation department is the probation department is working with the Barbados Prison Service, and we're looking this year at putting in, instituting electronic monitoring. So we don't want to have people locked up who do not need to be locked up, right? As far as I'm concerned, nobody should be in state care who does not need to be in state care. If it is that we don't trust you to stay home or stay away from bad influences, and that's the reason that you have to be at DODS, then can we give you an ankle bracelet and monitor where you go, and then have you at home in a more supportive environment for children or for other people, right, who is stint in a penal institution, whether it be government industrial school, whether it be DODS prison, might do you more harm than good. Can we otherwise monitor or control you, or keep you safe from outside influences, or keep outside influences safe from you in another way? So I am actually excited at the prospects of the electronic monitoring, parole, that sort of thing. There are people who are in prison because they have to serve out a certain amount of their sentence. And even where you have a model prisoner, beside the usual discounts that a prison year is not a prison year. So people, when you hear that somebody gets a year in prison, it's not a year, it's 9 months. But even outside that, if somebody has turned their life around, if somebody has gotten certificates while in prison, if they're the model prisoner, right, we need to have some system that allows not just an early release, but if even you think that there still needs some structure, right, that we can keep you under the guidance of the prison authorities or a supervisory board or something, right, but allow you to go out and function, allow you to go and have a job, allow you to reintegrate yourself into society, rather than serving out a sentence that might not be doing you any good because you reach the maximum benefit that you're going to get. So I'm actually excited at that combination between the probation department and the prison service in terms of the electronic monitoring and the introduction of parole into Barbados.
And just to be clear, the electronic monitoring, you said before the end of the year.
That is the plan. Everything is being put in place to bring it in as soon as possible. As I said, I have been a lawyer for well over 25 years. And I used to do a fair amount of criminal law. So you tend to see things from the other side as well. It's not just about lick and lock up. It's not just about losing away somebody in jail, right? It's also how do we help the person? Because sometimes you don't know somebody's story. And that person may have done exactly what you did. And you escape and learn from it. And you never had that stain on your character. But that person got caught, right? Or they just happened to choose the wrong path at a critical point in time that 9 times out of 10 would have yielded no negative result, but in their case, it did. So it's just our whole mindset. And when we get to talking about the prison, right, the whole mindset has changed from punishing people, right? That every crime or conviction must be met with punishment, to what is the best way to deal with this person that allows them to become a constructive, contributing member of society and allows society itself to benefit from their reintegration.
Well, as you rightly said, we will talk about the prison service a little later, but let's dwell on an institution that got a lot of publicity during your tenure as minister,
Oh, Lord.
the Government Industrial School. No. You had reports of abuse at the institution. You had wards of the state escaping. There was a long probe, the results of which were made public. The female wards are no longer at Barrows and St. Lucie, but they've now moved over to Dodds, and they're separate from the boys at that facility. Let's look at GIS 2 years later.
So that period where JS was one of the most challenging of my ministerial career, my political career. And what made it challenging is, once again, you hear the story from both sides. So there was a pretty awkward period there where there were things that I knew by virtue of being a minister, but they concerned the welfare of a child or a minor. So I could not even say them in my own defense, but I had to take all the licks that were coming from people who did not necessarily know all of the facts or who had an interest to serve. But having said that, the welfare of the children up there has always been our paramount concern, has always been mine. I did many pro bono cases involving kids when I was a lawyer. I am in politics for the children. If you see most of what I do or the initiatives are aimed at inspiring children or giving us something to do, because I believe in children. There's some adults that pass the point of salvation. Where Barbados is in 20 years or 30 years is not dependent on me or you. It's going to be dependent on those who are in school now. So I invest a lot of time and my energy into the children. The JS situation, so even now it is difficult to talk about it because it evokes some emotion, right? But even now, there's still things I can't tell you that might explain some of what we did, might explain some of what happened, might explain some of the things that appear to be taken out of context. But what it did do for us, it provoked a whole look at the regime dealing with children, child care, child protection, child justice. And that was always on our program, but it propelled that to the front burner. Those became critical front burner issues that had to be dealt with then. And that is a good thing that came from that. We are now looking at the institution of the child justice legislation and the child protection legislation. They're going to select committee. They had numerous sittings. The public was able to weigh in on them. And even so, we recently looked at some of the recommendations that came from the select committee, and we agreed in most part with most of them. We made the legislative tweaks, and the bill is going to go back to Parliament in its amended form to continue debate on it. So that process forced us to take a hard look at some things that we knew, and all of us knew, needed to be looked at. For many years, the whole issue of wandering, right? The historical basis for wandering has been one that everybody said shouldn't be there, but nobody wanted to touch it, because to touch that, you would need to look at everything, because you can't have a vacuum. You must have some way of acknowledging children in crisis, being able to assist them, give them the help that they need, or in certain instances, protect them from themselves. So it was not simply take the wandering out of the statute books. If you pull the wandering out of the statute books, it would then allow people to fall through the cracks that might not need to be restrained or in a restrictive environment because they were not home or found on the streets or were doing things they shouldn't be doing. But you might be able now to look at what the factors are. What are the underlying factors? What's the problem at home? What's the problem in schools? What have we not picked up? what can be done to help them, what can be done to divert them, what can be done to actually put them on a more constructive path that they make something of themselves. So the focus of the new legislation, and I'm not going to go too much into this because we're going to debate this fully in Parliament. The focus in the new legislation is diversion. How can we keep you out of the system while still getting you the attention and the care that you need to address what your underlying issues are? It's when it comes back before Parliament, it's going to be a very interesting debate. I am comfortable and confident that this is the best possible legislation now to address the concerns with our children and to provide care for them from early identification of issues up to any unfortunate event that they do commit a criminal offense and have to be taken under the wing of the state, how best to deal with that, to once again return them as constructive members of society. In relation to Barrows itself, I've always had a bit of an issue with Barrows being where it was, because even to get there, you had to drive all the way to St. Lucie. You know, my friend Peter Phillips can tell me, stop saying all the way to St. Lucie. But relative to the rest of Barbados, it's far. You had to drive there and you had to search for it. You didn't find that place easily. So in a almost kind of way, is that if you put what people call the problem children up there, you put them up there, they serve the 3 years and then they get out, but you lost them way up there for the period. So I was never comfortable with Barrows as being a facility, but is what we had. We, having consulted in relation to this, it was thought best, you know what, let us integrate the two facilities. For practical reasons, we had to provide security at Barrows. You had to provide equipment at Barrows. You had to have a separate kitchen at Barrows. Whereas what we eventually did is we retrofitted Dodds, the government industrial school at Dodds, and made it into I'm not going to say co-ed, right? But effectively a facility that could accommodate both boys and girls. So we split some of the costs. You then have tutors or the programs that can service both the boys and the girls. So it made sense. And we've not had any difficulty up there since then. Not with our intentions that by the time we're done, we're about to do some more work up there in terms of the administrative block. We keep trying to put programs in there that are relevant. I'm sure you would have seen the haircutting program where some items were donated. All of the programs that can help the children learn a skill that can take them out of that environment where they have to depend on somebody else. So even at the government industrial school, we're trying to promote a culture of entrepreneurship. The reality in Barbados, as much as we're trying to change it, and we're going to keep trying to change it, is once you leave a state facility, whether it's that you're in prison or whether it's that you went to the government industrial school, once you leave a state facility, you're branded as that person. People don't want to give you a chance. I must applaud our government, because early up we took a position that if the government is not willing to help people who might have had a conviction, then we can't expect the private sector to. So you might see people, a number of the programs that they have, persons are in those programs who might otherwise not find another kind of job. So we are trying to save people or help to mitigate the frustration some find in leaving a government facility and trying to look for work. We're trying to prepare you for going back outside. We're trying to teach you how to have a bank account, how to open an email, how to apply for a job. But we also want to teach you that while you are waiting for your dream job, why don't you consider working for yourself? Why don't we give you a skill set that allows you to make money? A lot of people don't know this about me, but my first job was as a barber. At 13 years old, I started cutting hair. And even when I qualified, I cut hair all through secondary school. I cut hair at university behind the pavilion at Cave-Hill. When I went to law school at Hewooden, I found a space at the law school and I cut hair there. And even when I came back and I started as a lawyer. When you start as a lawyer, you're not making the money. So I dress it in my nice suit. I go in my briefcase, down to court, We represented people in court for free because I'm trying to get in the newspaper so people know that I exist. But come 4:30, I packing it and heading home very quick to cut hair to make the money. So that taught me it's not always about depending on somebody. Sometimes it's easy to control your own hours. Sometimes you need to do for yourself in order to get yourself ahead. So that's why I was actually pushing the barbering because there's a soft spot in my heart for that. But it applies in any event to any entrepreneurial activity. People scoff when we're looking at programs. People look at, let me get some certificates for the kids, but not everybody is wired in that direction. There's some people, no matter what opportunities you give them, will not get a certificate. But can that person then learn a skill? Can that person do something else that gives them pride, knowing I made this and I did this by myself? What is your natural skill set? Let us help you to find that. So, Government Industrial School, 2 years on, we still have the lingering memory of what transpired. I am glad that it resolved itself relatively well. I got a phone call from a young lady who was up there at the time recently, and she was asking if I could guide her in a certain direction. Actually, let me tell you, she wants to be a police officer. She was one of the young ladies who really pushed. She did well. When she came up for early release, I was happy to sign early release for her because, I mean, she really made use of her time up there to go on the straight and narrow. She wanted to be a police officer. And she's concerned that her having been there at Government Industrial School may prevent her from getting the force. And I try to do whatever I can to help you, right? Because I think yours is one of those success stories. There's another young lady who called me recently and said that she goes, I am now your constituent. And I said to her, really? She goes, yes, I am now your constituent. I just bought a house at Atlantic Breeze. I say, you bought a house at Atlantic Breeze? She goes, Mr. Abrams, I'm a progressive woman, right? And I had to laugh. I remember her very fondly because when I was practicing, I happened to be in court when her matter was being dealt with and her attitude was all wrong. It was completely wrong. So I went and sat down next to her and said to her, what are you trying to accomplish? Right? And she said, oh, well and good for me to talk, whatnot. And I said to her, look, if you don't take charge of yourself, you're always going to find yourself behind the ball. I say, you sport very well in representing yourself. You sport very well in articulating your position, but you're rude. So as much as you're intelligent, your attitude is going to rub people the wrong way. And I said to her, tell you what, I try to help young people. So when you come home, give me a shout, right? And I will try to help you. She didn't have any certificates. And the girl actually, when she came out, she did come and shout me, and she went and did a cosmetology course, right, which we assisted her with, and she did well. And then she wanted to go and do eyelashes. I'm here thinking to myself, well, you don't try to get some certificates, right? The same thing I told you about, that was my thought as most Bajans going to finish the school, and that's what I told Rihanna too. What are you signing a contract? Go and finish the CSEs. But I promised her, I said, whatever you want to do that I can help you to get a start, I'll help you with. And that young lady is now a successful business person. I've used her to talk to other young people who I think need a motivational figure that they can see this is where they were and this is what they've become and they can do it too. And she just bought her own house. So there are success stories from the system. But we need to change our system to make sure there are more success stories. In some instances, those were people who succeeded despite the odds. Yeah. We're now trying to level that playing field so that our entire system is geared at trying to make you succeed. You are in our care and custody for a while. Let us ensure you come out better equipped and a better person you went in. And for those, quite frankly, that don't need to be in our care, how can we, while keeping an eye on you, use the resources of the state to allow you to develop and reach your maximum potential? So it's a challenging area for us, but I think 2 years on, we have come a very, very long way. I think 2 years on, the future looks bright for the institution and for the programs that the government has put in place to manage and take care of our children. I think 2 years on, I want to say I'm glad for the experience of what we went through, but I will tell you that that whole period made me a significantly stronger person.
Many call for your resignation.
Well, they weren't getting it so easy, right? I will tell you this, that for some who know the full story of what happened, because there was a video circulating that portrayed, that showed some of what transpired up there. For those who saw the video, their response and perspective was entirely different from those who just were jumping on the bandwagon of people who had an axe to grind or an interest to serve. When we didn't shy away, we met with all of the interest groups. We outlined what it is we were planning to do. We included them in the process. And quite frankly, that went a long way to restoring goodwill. So that really kick-started the process of the buy-in that led us to this point. You're not really hearing the interest groups or the child advocates down on us for what is happening with the government industrial school, our policies, our programs, because they're now involved in what is being discussed. They're involved in the development. They're involved in it all. So I think that was, out of that came a lot of good, and I prefer to focus on the good.
So, Minister, up to this point today, can you state how many wards are at GIS, both females and males?
Yes. Right now, there are 10 wards at GIS. There are 8 boys and 2 girls. 4 of the boys are on remand for serving a sentence, and the girls, both girls are on remand. So, with the removal of wandering from our statute books, most of the young ladies who were at GIS were there on charges of wandering. So the numbers came down automatically once that was removed. And even before that was removed from the statute books, the magistrates were easing off of remanding people who are committing them for that following the whole incident at Barrows. So that naturally started to whittle its way down, and it was formally removed. So the bulk of the young ladies would have been up there for wandering, and that is no longer there, so they're happily not there.
All right, Minister, still a lot more to chat about. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
The Barbados Police Service is a dynamic organization which caters to the needs of all residents by providing excellent customer service within our communities. We are excited to inform you that we are recruiting new members to our ranks and welcome your participation.
We are building the Barbados Police Service within our communities. Are you smart, skillful, motivated, ambitious, reliable, and talented?
Smart to fulfill your life's dream.
Smart to chart career opportunities.
Smart to make a difference.
Smart to pursue economic sustainability.
Smart to enable change.
Smart to provide public service.
I say to you today, if you have a love for people, if you enjoy nurturing your communities and taking care of persons, then definitely the Barbados Police Service, of which I am a proud member, is the place for you. So I encourage you, lend us a hand, join us now to help keep Barbados safe.
Come join us, join me in making our country a safer Barbados.
Your place is here in the Barbados Police Service.
Come, join our ranks and chart a career of economic sustainability. Make that difference as an agent of change while providing public service as you fulfill your life's dream.
The Coastal Zone Management Unit wishes to advise the public that the reefs along the coast of Barbados are currently experiencing coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is a phenomenon where corals lose their natural coloration and appear bright white as a consequence of stress. In this bleached state, corals are vulnerable and may die if bleaching persists. Given the elevated water temperatures we have seen in recent weeks, it is believed that the coral bleaching is due to heat stress. It is hoped that once temperatures return to normal, the corals will recover. The Coastal Zone Management Unit will continue to monitor the situation and update as required. Thank you.
Keep it clean, keep it green.
Barbadians, we invite you to get involved and play your part as we clean and green Barbados. Come into your community with media launches, bulk waste collection exercises, community engagement sessions, and giveaways. Get on board. Let's keep Barbados clean and green.
Beautiful, beautiful Barbados.
Hi, I'm Carl Padmore, Public Relations Officer of the Sanitation Service Authority. Maybe you would have witnessed roadkill, or you would have passed the highway or a byway and seen a dead animal. We want you to report it to one of the numbers coming across the screen. We'll come and we'll remove that dead animal. Also, if you have an animal who has passed away at your home, we prefer you to do it the legal way than to throw it into the gully, contaminate the gully, and then we have problems. Barbados, we love our environment. Let us care our environment. Therefore, the correct way to dispose of dead animals, call the number coming across the screen. We are here to help you. The SSA cares. Clean thoughts, clean living, clean nation.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams. Minister, in the first half, we only got through the probation service and the government industrial school. Now, after the age of 18 and persons commit crimes, they're not sentenced to GIS, of course, but to Dodds Prison. And the prison has also had its fair share of controversy over the last few years, and since you've been minister, and this resulted in a full-scale inquiry. That inquiry has been completed, but the results were sealed. Issues raised at the time were the recruitment and promotions processes, the treatment of staff. There's also been concern in relation to inmates about their medical care and the protection of inmates when they are in transit or attending court or clinic. Let's go back now to the COVID era. Let's not even deal with the inquiry yet. Let's go back to the COVID era because COVID infiltrated the prison naturally. You had officers who were ill, you had inmates who were ill, and I know that was also challenging at that time.
I will say that my life as a minister and my portfolios have not been simple. And challenging is a word that probably hits me in every ministry I've been in. I mean, I started out my ministerial career dealing with problem number one, the South Coast sewage issue, right? And it has gotten more challenging since then. With respect to the prison, COVID was a most interesting time in the history of Barbados. And we knew that COVID was going to hit the prison at some point in time. It was not a if, it was not a, it was a when. It was a when. We did everything we could. We had protocols in place up front, so we did not wait until COVID got to the prison to develop protocols for the prison. We knew up front, from the time X happened, this will trigger Y and Z. The prison being a national security institution, we could not be disseminating information out in the same way that everybody was talking about COVID and the figures and whatnot. The prison figures were relevant to the prison, and while we had to supply those figures to the health authorities and the Ministry of Health, those were not for general consumption. Persons were naturally concerned about their relatives in prison. because of the nature of a prison, where everybody is in a confined space and you share spaces, once COVID got into prison, it spread like wildfire. Right? It spread quickly. It is not that you could isolate the whole prison individually. If you were at home and you got COVID, they stuck you in a room until you don't come out, and somebody pass you food through the door and whatnot. That's how the majority of families dealt with that. Now, that's a family of 2, 3, 4. Imagine a family of 700. We had set up an isolation facility at the prison to handle the most sick people. We also had it fully staffed. The testing was done by the Ministry of Health. We had doctors coming out and testing people. We had a quarantine regime. We then had to manage who exercised when, whatnot. But the funny thing about a prison is, while it might be one of the places where an infectious disease might spread the fastest, it's also the place that you can most control what it is that you do. We locked down Barbados when COVID was rampant in Barbados. There were the curfews and people weren't supposed to be out except they were doing critical things and whatnot. It is the nature of people to challenge rules. So when the restrictions were on, people still tried to figure out how can I push the border, and that with a prison is not that. If we are locking down this block, we are locking down this block. What we did was we had full communication with the inmates at the prison. They understood what was going on. They understood why it was being done. They were encouraged, if you had a symptom, to say something. And I think that information sharing being done made all the difference as to how the situation at the prison was managed. It was impossible to test everybody all the time. So we had a policy of isolation for a certain point in time. If you tested positive, then we locked down your entire block for a period of time. Whatever the quarantine period was, we locked it down for the period of time. And quite frankly, at the end of that period, anybody had it, doesn't have it anymore.
Right.
So we were able to manage it that way. And our system worked so well to contain COVID in the prison that I got a number of calls from other Caribbean countries who were asking us, please, to share our protocols with them. So our prison protocols for COVID actually informed the prison protocols in a number of other countries in the Caribbean. So we were best in class for how we dealt with COVID in the prison. I mean, even now, we still have instances of it, right? But you don't hear it anymore, because once it happens, once somebody tests, once somebody is suspected, then we trigger the protocols, we deal with it in-house, and as quickly as we can to ensure the safety of all, and then we go about our business. So it is not that COVID has not touched the prison again, or we've not had instances of persons having COVID or had to activate our protocols, but we've quietly activated them without the glare of people who want to point fingers and say you're not doing it right. Our protocols have proven to be effective when administered properly. And we just quietly deal with it in-house now, and it's not an issue. So it was very challenging. It was challenging to tell officers, look, because of what has happened here, we have to lock down the prison. You can't go home. And I want to shout out to those officers. They're persons who were in there for 2 weeks, right, who could not leave and go home and see their families. They know that they were in an infectious situation, and they buckled down and they did their job as professionals. They helped to share the information. They kept a positive outlook. They helped us to keep it under control. And because of their commitment and their approach and their dedication, and the dedication of the hierarchy of the prison as well, we weathered COVID better than anybody could have expected. So it was a complete buy-in from those who happened to be in there at the time. And we then had situations where people were afraid to come in and report for duty. So we then still had to manage with a skeleton staff and extended hours. But I will say, I will say we could not have achieved what we achieved over COVID without the cooperation of the prisoners, without the cooperation of the staff who was there, and without the oversight and management of the prison management. So it was difficult, but it was handled in an A-class fashion at the end of the day.
No, that's COVID, but there are general concerns regarding the medical care. The medical care, we're dealing with health. The medical care of inmates by some relatives. They're saying that they're not being treated properly.
So every single one of those notifications that we get, some people call me directly and say that their son was supposed to do X and didn't, or their son is a diabetic and they don't think he's getting the correct care. And every single time we follow up and I get a report and I'm able to alert people as to what is going on or ask the superintendent to communicate with them. In some instances, we've had to adjust the protocols to bring it in line with best practice. But people are very concerned about those that they can't get a hold of. And if you're homesick and your mother's concerned about you, your mother can keep poking her head in your bedroom saying, Lisa, how you doing? Lisa, you okay? She come and test you for a fever.
But in a prison you can't do it.
In a prison you can't do it.
Yeah.
And you hear that your child is sick and you start to panic. And it's a natural human response. So I have to keep sometimes saying, like, let us be aware that who is in the prison is somebody's child. That's somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's father, right? And they don't have the information that you do. So sometimes we just have to bend it slightly and share the information with them that allows them to get some degree of comfort. But it's not perfect. It's not perfect by any stretch. But we keep working on the protocols to ensure that the best possible care is given.
And like I said previously, some of the issues related to promotions and recruitment.
I can say that the promotion recruitments, the superintendent of prisons has been a firm advocate of trying to get people promoted. But we know there have been challenges across the whole public sector. And although somebody is recommended for promotion, it does not mean the promotion is going to come through. That is the Ministry of Public Service. I don't want to say too much on that, but I will say that the superintendent has been pushing, and I've been pushing, trying to get people their due. Because if you are supposed to be at a certain point, then you're mentally calculating what your salary is supposed to be. And once you know you've achieved what you're supposed to achieve, then you want to see pay commensurate with where you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
And these things affect, can you buy a house?
Yeah.
Right? Can you move from where you are, move out your parents' house and go and rent somewhere? So there are real concerns that we're trying to address, actually not just in the prison. We're trying to address across the ministry. In our estimates meeting, we had a discussion with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister wanted to see, okay, please show me all of the persons that you're concerned about from the HR perspective, all who are supposed to be promoted, all who's supposed to be confirmed, all who's supposed to be whatever. So I know that the Ministry of Public Service is working on it. But yes, those were a number of concerns in the prison. And the prison is a close-knit department. Everybody comes to work in the same place. So it's not even that you're spread across a ministry or spread across different buildings. Everybody comes to work in the same place. So they air their frustrations, and their frustrations are common frustrations, and we're trying our best to deal with them. But it has been challenging.
Speaking about how close-knit the prison is, you had a situation last September where an inmate escaped. There were allegations surrounding that inmate having an inappropriate relationship with one of the prison officers. It also raised the question about how safe is Dodds prison really, because this was a relatively young man who's not a hardened criminal, but yet he escaped all of the security systems you had at Dodds.
The difficulty here is that there were two separate incidents. If you remember, an inmate had escaped from QEH and was caught back shortly thereafter. And then we have one where somebody escaped from Dodds itself. So what has happened is that people have been conflating the two incidents and thinking it's the same prisoner. So that's actually not the case. But yes, we did have concerns about an inappropriate relationship between a prison officer and a prisoner. That was being investigated, and the prison officer did resign and moved on, but disciplinary processes were recommended against that prison officer. So that was something that was under investigation when the person actually resigned. So we dealt with that. In relation to the youngster who escaped the prison itself, that was where the person saw opportunity and took it. We had a situation where protocols internally were not followed. There's certain strict protocols that we followed in relation to how many doors are open and that sort of thing. And in that instance, the protocols were not followed. The inmate saw opportunity and took advantage of that and escaped. I will tell you that nobody will ever escape from that building again in the same way, because we identified, sometimes you, as well as you think you construct something, as many scenarios as you've played through and you think you've covered them, you need to see the weakness in action to know that the weakness is there. So from the time he escaped that route, we rewalked his route and tightened up everything there. So I can guarantee you that that mode and pathway to escape does not exist anymore. But at the time, it wasn't considered enough of a threat, because if the protocols had been followed, then he would never have been able to escape that way. But there was a lapse in the protocols. We're increasing security around Dodds. We were looking, and Dodds was constructed a while ago. And we were looking at everything, upgrading, doing some maintenance to ensure the security of the prison. But I will say this on the last escape from the prison itself. It's amazing how we can use technology for good. So when the prisoner escaped, drones went up. The police service was activated. The prison response team kicked into high gear. It was put out through GIS. We actually engaged some of the social media people to put out the bulletin. And we got a lot of information. The public itself supplies some valuable information leading to the recapture of the person. So in short order, our emergency PR protocols that people did not even know existed kicked in, because we thought, you know what, we can't keep doing things the same way. If this happens, how can we get the information out quickly? So even to not even just going through JS or going through CBC, but there's certain persons that we know have large followings, right? And we don't try to guide what it is that you report or what it is that you do, but equally, if a message needs to get out to the whole of Barbados, then we are going to contact you and ask you, please, to push this. And it worked tremendously then. So his time on the run was very short-lived. He was caught back the same afternoon. I would tell you that Dodds is a safe space. That was the first escape from Dodds from the time that Dodds was actually commissioned. So if you have one break in how many years that was, right, then I think we've done well. And as I said, we identified the weaknesses that allowed him to escape, and those weaknesses were addressed in short. Within 7 days, those weaknesses were addressed, and we're continuing the upgraded maintenance at the prison to make sure that everything is working as it should. We relooked the protocols, right, and we had a full report on that. But in talking about Dodds, I have to be very careful what I tell you, because once again, it's a national security institution. So I can tell you that I'm comfortable that Dodds is a safe prison. Dodds is a safe space. And we do our internal investigation. So the issue of the prison officer having an inappropriate relationship, we knew. But you monitor and you build a case. It makes no sense acting if you can't prove. So like anything else, when the police are doing an investigation, they build a case and then they take action. And we owe it to the person to actually to confirm the suspicions before charging them or alleging something that might stay in their character forever.
So we dealt with inappropriate relationships. What about appropriate relationships? You talk about bringing the system into the 21st century. What about the introduction of conjugal visits? You are dealing with human beings who have feelings.
So, interestingly, of all the requests that I've gotten as minister responsible for prison, from can you please check and see if my son is okay, to this person has a particular diet and we don't think they're getting enough of, to why don't you have more programs dealing with X, right? To why don't you have a PA system and TVs that can push educational programming in all the blocks all the time, which we've done. I have never once gotten a request for a conjugal visit.
Really?
Not once. I have wondered to myself when that request is going to come. And I have no doubt that now you've raised it on national TV, it is going to come. But we've never had a request for it. It makes me wonder, like, why?
Well, we're not going to ask why, but in any case, is it something that you would consider?
We're looking to do best practice for our prison. We're looking to enhance all the educational opportunities. We're looking to enhance skill sets. We're looking to give person certification, CVQs. We have an expanded farming program. We're looking, as I said, at parole, a parole system. We're looking at electronic monitoring. We're looking at all these things. We are considering, are willing to consider everything that will put our prison and our rehabilitative efforts as best in class. If that is raised, then it's something we would have to look at. I'm not saying what it's going to be, but it's something I guess we have to look at along with every other thing that we look at.
I just find it interesting that if you're looking at the overall well-being of inmates, that, you know, sex was not part of the discussion.
So, where conjugal visits occur, I mean, you know that happened in North America, in the States, in Canada, places like that. It has not been a part or feature of our culture, our experience. As I said, when we thought about sentencing someone to prison, it used to be a theory, lock them away until they serve the time and then let them back out. So no consideration was given at that point in time to education development, to getting people to have skill sets, to reintegration, to how do we make this person whole? How do we make this broken person whole? So I'm not surprised it has never been contemplated. As I told you, I was surprised that it had never been asked for. But we're looking at how do we prepare people for reintegration into society. And quite frankly, we have to look at every aspect of that. I'm not saying we're going to come down one way or the other, but it is something that has to be considered and examined. If we're saying that we want to make you more educated, we want to give you a skill set, we want to give you CVQs, we want to give you confidence, we want to give you rehabilitative programming, we want to give you drug treatment if you want. We're doing all these things so you can come back and reintegrate yourself, not just into society, but also into your family. So I guess a natural progression there is that you want the family to be intact when the person comes back out. And there are things that go with that. It is a difficult question. It is something that I do believe at some point in time we are going to have to look at. I don't think we can get away from it. As I say, I'm just surprised nobody has ever asked before. But having said that, I am sure that you're having asked on national television. Somebody's going to ask that question.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll let me know.
I'm sure.
So let's look at the programs that you do have in place. And I remember years ago, the prison, the inmates would showcase their skills in terms of baking, art, craft, etc.
So our programs at the prison have expanded. So we do have the art program still. And I actually have a number of pieces of art from prisoners in my house. Everybody knows about the furniture. A lot of government furniture. The furniture in our conference room in this ministry was made in the prison. There's an automotive section there where they teach people how to repair vehicles, how to do body work. Don't forget, all these programs we're doing so people have an avenue for employment when they come out. I, as a minister, am open to any program that can help to advance people. Our farming program has taken off. the prison is now self-sufficient in the supply of meat to the prison. So we have the pork with the pigs, chickens, sheep, and now we have fish farming at the prison. So all of these programs, the persons who are involved in them can take that skill out with them when they go. And these skills are skills that all lead or indicate an entrepreneurial slant. It is going to be difficult. Let's not pretend. When you come out with the label ex-con, I don't care how many roses we put around it, people are going to call you the ex-con and say, "Your father went to prison," or "that body went to prison." It is going to be challenging. We are working on changing the psyche of Barbadians and the perception of prison by trying to concentrate more on the rehabilitative aspect or the restorative justice aspect. But if you are able to come out and seamlessly transition into working for yourself, then it helps you to avoid that period of frustration, that period where you feel unaccepted, where you feel nobody's giving you a chance, and allows you to control your destiny and support your family. And all of our programs now, and our programs, we're opening as wide as possible. We're doing online studies, we're doing online access. All of our programming is now geared towards ensuring that once you serve your debt to society, once you paid your debt to society, then you can integrate as seamlessly as possible and become a contributing member society. Society must benefit at the end of the day from your stint in prison. And for that to happen, then you have to benefit too.
And obviously, if you're producing your own meat, fish, etc., you've brought down the budget for the budget substantially.
We have brought down the food budget in the prison substantially. And it's not just the prison. So we're looking at putting ourselves in a position that we can supply meat and veg to school meals, the hospital, and also the BDF. So we're not even just looking at the prison as itself. The prison needs to produce, not just pay its own way, but also help to offset some of the other operations of government. We have lots of land. We have people who want to work. We have people who want to learn a skill. Let us turn that into some benefit to government and also a benefit to the inmate, because we're putting programs in place that allow you to generate income while you're there. I mean, it won't be at a market rate, but you will generate income so that when you leave the prison, you can leave with some money in hand. You're not walking out with your two hands swinging. You can leave with something that might enable you to rent a property, to buy a car, buy a cell phone, start a bank account, something to start to get yourself on track and be just like everybody else.
So all in all, you are satisfied with the progress being made at Dodds Prison?
All in all, I am very satisfied with the progress being made at Dodds Prison. There's always room for improvement. We are looking constantly at ways to improve it, but I think that for the most part, those who work there, those who have charge of the prison, actually have experienced a shift in mindset where the welfare of the inmate is paramount. You know you're not the friend of the inmate, right? But also, they don't want to be there. Let's try to make them as comfortable as possible so we don't have any issues, but also let's try to make them as productive as possible. So it's a work in progress, but I am confident that we're on the right track.
Well, Minister, we started the program saying that we wouldn't be able to get through all of your departments. We have only touched 3. So you will stay for part 2?
That is because you've been asking me questions, and you ask me questions, I have to answer.
Well, you
fully.
have a very expansive portfolio, sir. So we have to give everybody their treatment. So yes to part 2?
Yes to part 2.
Okay, yes to part 2. Minister, thank you so very much. But you're not going anywhere. You'll sit and chat with me a little longer. But that is all for this one-on-one. Join us next Sunday when we continue our discussion with the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams. I'm Lisa Lord. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.
Thank you.